sort of videos. Thanks for your comments in relation to the other video. I might come back to that topic at another point, possibly, we'll see. But thanks for your comments, which I've read. I just want to clarify just one thing. I know one of you said that you're not allowed to say transsexual anymore, but transgender or something. I do admit my ignorance on this. I haven't really done enough reading, so yes, as you suggested, I'll go and do some more reading, which I don't know if I'm in the mood for doing that right now, but I am fairly ignorant on the matter. But what I do know is, from a feminist perspective, is that gender is a construct and biological sex is something more innate, more embedded, more biological. And obviously gender and sex do overlap in some respects. You know, based upon, say, if you're like a biological male, for example, and you have more muscles than your average female, that might potentially make it easier for you to do certain work, for example, which then might influence some of your interests, which is the gender aspect. So, they're not completely divorced from one another, but it is very important to remember that overall, gender is a construct in a sense that society kind of accentuates for differences that already exist between men and women on a biological level, and society accentuates that by adding on or overlaying a more socially constructed difference, which doesn't have to be as big as it is. So there's nothing, innate about, say, a man, say, liking to, I don't know, on average maybe preferring to play with trains than girls do, for example. There's nothing innate about that. That's all to do with social conditioning and gendered expectations. That's gender. It's a construct, and sex is something more biological and more physical, and to do with hormones and things like that. And I think it's really important to have that distinction in mind. And that's why I talked about transsexual, because to me it is something. If you want to change your sex, you're changing your biology, you're changing your chemistry, you're wanting to look more physically, say, the opposite sex or whatever, which is why people have sex changes and things like that. Obviously not all of them do, but there's still this sense of being kind of, it's more rooted in a sort of biological aspect, whereas gender is being a construct. So in that respect, when I said that it could be argued that we're all transgender, I merely meant that none of us is fixed in a gender, because gender is a construct. And I do wonder if we lived in a more sort of like society that didn't give a crap about, what men and women are supposed to do and stuff, whether or not there wouldn't be all this gender identity thing, because people would just be like, okay, I'm insert name, and I like this and I like that. It's neutral, it's just what I like, it's just what I do. You wouldn't have to apply gender to it, because gender wouldn't exist. And that's ultimately what radical feminism wants to do. It wants to get rid of gender, because gender is a construct, so it's completely irrelevant. And also, I do sometimes feel that, one of you mentioned Foucault as well, which is great, by the way. I have read Foucault, but a long time ago. And it's interesting, again, I think Foucault would agree with a lot of this. I think I'll go back and, as I say, I might come back to this on another time and talk about this further, we'll see. But yeah, gender is kind of a straitjacket, and from an existential perspective, it is something that we could do without, because it constrains us. It turns something, it turns interests and inclinations into something more concrete than they actually are, as opposed to something fluid that we choose and that changes over time. It's not like an identity. And of course, yeah, that's kind of what I think. So what was I saying? So I was talking about gender as a construct, which I think is very, very important. And also this idea that most people sort of see themselves more solidly as sort of man or woman in terms of their gender. I'm not talking about biological sex, by the way, that's a different thing. Most people are perfectly happy in the biological sex they've been born with. They kind of inhabit their body, they don't feel out of place in their skin. But also, obviously, a minority of people do, and that's why I was talking about transsexuals as people who radically feel out of place in their body. I do feel it's a bit of a misnomer calling that transgender, because gender is a construct and no one has a gender because gender is a construct. It's kind of, although people do talk in terms of gender, that doesn't mean it's a real thing. It is real, but only in a kind of socially constructed sense. So yeah, of course it's real in that sense. It has a massive impact on our lives, and that's what feminism is all about, is challenging it. So it is real, but it's not real in any kind of it's not real in any outside of society sense. It is 100% society. That's what gender is. So gender is inside society and value systems, whereas sex is something that transcends society because it's more innate. And it's a mistake, I feel, to think that most people go about their lives thinking in terms of gender, which is quite a kind of that is an ignorant statement in itself, because most people don't go through their lives thinking about gender. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I'm really feminine today, so I'm going to go and paint my nails, or maybe some people do, but I'm sure that, most people just do whatever they happen to be interested in. So if a woman paints her nails, it's just because she likes body art or whatever. Some women might do it because they feel it's expected of them, maybe, and also there is social conditioning involved. So some women might do it. I guess the key is whether or not the person feels it's down to their choice and whether or not they feel it's imposed upon them. If it's a genuine free decision, then it's going to feel authentic and not imposed. So a woman who paints her nails because she genuinely likes painting her nails and she's not thinking that society's imposed upon it and she doesn't feel under any obligation to do it, that's a free choice. And men should have that free choice as well to paint their nails, but it shouldn't ever feel something that's being imposed on them. The problem with gender and why it can be restrictive is because people often occupy roles that they feel they should do, because society expects them to do it, and that is really an inauthentic way to live. But although there is this constraining influence on our lives, when we're being most authentic and most free, we're not thinking about gender, we're just doing what we're interested in, and most people just are not fixated on gender in that way. I think the sort of gender identity sort of snowflakes, and that's basically what I think they are. People who, I'm not talking about people who have a genuine condition, which is, I'm not talking about trans people, by the way. I'm not talking about trans people, that's a real thing, okay? Before anyone accuses me of transphobia, I'm not talking about trans people, I 100% support them. I'm not transphobic in any way, so don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about people with genuine trans issues, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about, I have to be very clear about that. I'm talking about all this special identity, kind of special snowflakey, kind of non-binary nonsense, which really is absolutely absurd now. And as I said, everyone's non-binary. So it's completely redundant saying that a small minority of people are non-binary, because everyone is, in the sense that people don't go around their lives fixating on gender. I think that's the issue. These non-binary people, because they're fixated on gender, and it's almost become like a kind of absolute thing for them to be obsessed with gender, and a fair number of them, it has to be said, are autistics, I think, because autistics often really want an identity, particularly undiagnosed ones, and also young people are very influenced by it as well, because again, they're searching for an identity, but in teenagers love identity. In a way, all of this, we used to have goths, we used to have all these other labels. Now this is the new thing, this is. People used, it's kind of replacing, well, it's not completely replacing, I think we still have goths and things like that, but it's kind of, it's a bigger thing now than goths. But I would say it's a similar thing, it's identity politics thing. It's like a subculture. That's what it is, it's a subculture. But the mistake there is, because subcultures are by definition elitist and snowflakey anyway, and also it's quite ironic really, because in rejecting mainstream society and becoming a subculture, in and of themselves they become conformist, because they're all conforming to this special snowflakey identity thing that they're rallying around, and then they kind of think that everyone else outside of that is kind of conformist, but that's not actually the case. It's just that most people don't go around their daily lives thinking about gender every second. And most people just are not constrained by gender, and they think everyone else is constrained by gender and that they're outside of gender, while ironically they're obsessing about gender all the time. And for example, pangender, thinking I don't feel female today. Well, most people don't wake up in the morning thinking about gender. It's not the first thing they think. The first thing most people think when they get up in the morning is, I need to have a coffee. That's what most people think. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, I don't feel like a woman today, or I don't feel feminine today. That's not the first thing. I mean, maybe, okay, I am autistic and I don't really know what neurotypicals think, so, maybe I'm mistaken. But it's not what I think when I wake up in the morning, I can say that. And I assume that most people don't think that either. When I wake up in the morning, my first thought is, I need a coffee. What activity am I going today? I'm not thinking, oh, how feminine do I feel today? That's just not how I feel. I'm non-binary. We're all non-binary. So let's just get out of this special snowflakey nonsense. And that's what really annoys me about all this non-binary stuff. It's just so completely. It's just special snowflake. That's all I can say. Okay, moving over to video number 2 now, because I just want to, on a completely different subject, I just want to talk about something else of interest that's happened recently that you might find amusing. So moving over to video number 2, that'll be quite a quick thing. I just want to tell you about something that's quite funny that's happened. So moving over to video number 2 now.